I believe that women everywhere can be and are agents of change, drivers of progress, makers of peace. All we need is a fighting chance to show what we can do in every part of life.
Hillary Clinton continuing to keep the door wide open to a run for president in 2016. And we're back now with the panel. Well, as we mentioned in the tease to the last commercial, the New York Times has an interesting cover out today. And please check it out. Yep, Planet Hillary, it says, with a variety of political factors and factions being held together by her gravitational pull. George, what do you make of it as art, and what do you make of it as political commentary?
Bad, both. Is she going to run? Fish got to swim, birds got to fly, and Clintons have to run for office. It's what they do. It's a metabolic urge. That's all they've done in their entire adult life, is borrow money from rich people to seek public office. And I think that will continue. And the New York Times article is a guide to this. The problem is, nothing is more annoying to voters and infuriating to activists than a candidate that comes cloaked in an aura of inevitability. Because it says, in effect, you really don't matter. This is a foregone conclusion. And their inclination is to say, well, we'll just see about that. The context she will be running in 2016 is, first, toward the end of a lost decade of slow economic growth. B, in 2016, we will have had 3 consecutive two-term presidencies. The last time we had that, and the only other time we had that, was Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe before the two-party system emerged. We've had a period of uncommon stability in the presidency, and that makes it even less likely that we're going to give a third term to the same party.
In addition, and let me ask you, I'm just thinking, was after Monroe, was it Jackson?
No, John Quincy.
John Quincy, so it was one term.
Right.
There you go. God, I'm so ignorant, folks, I'm sorry. In addition to the magazine article, there were a number of interesting stories out in the last week, Julie, and I want to talk about it, about big Democrats joining the Hillary Clinton bandwagon. And perhaps the most interesting was the fact that Jim Messina, who was the campaign manager for Barack Obama in 2012, has now become co-chair of the big Hillary super PAC called Priorities USA. From your sources in the White House, any sense of how the president is reacting to the idea of all of these people of his team so early jumping on the Hillary bandwagon? And what about poor old Joe Biden? Is he feeling like he's being left out in the dust and the cold?
So I don't have a great sense of how the president himself is thinking about this, but people around him in the White House and people who are close to him outside the White House, when you do talk to them, there is some sense of maybe this is happening a little too early. Part of the reason why they think it is just it's a money issue. Priorities wants to be out there. They want to be able to start raising money now, and Hillary Clinton is the big ticket in the Democratic Party. So if they align themselves with her, they see this as a way to start getting money into the coffers a little bit early. You know, poor Joe Biden. He's sitting there saying, you know, I'm sitting vice president and everyone is already looking at me as plan B. And I do think, though, that that is a concern for Democrats, because if Hillary Clinton does decide not to run, and for all we know, she may be sitting there saying, I'm not going to do it, whoever becomes the nominee, whether it's Joe Biden or anybody else, at this point is going to so clearly look like the B team, the second choice. And how Democrats try to frame that, I think that'll be pretty problematic.
Do you get the sense that there's going to be more to follow after Jim Messina, more of the Obama team that helped him win in 2012, jumping on the Hillary?
It is more than Jim Messina at this point. You have people who were doing digital outreach, people who were doing analytics and targeting who have also lined up. They're not as big of names, but you do have a lot of people from the Obama campaign who were good at the things that the Hillary Clinton 2008 campaign was not good at, some of the new technologies, who are also lining up behind her.
Now, one of the things that Hillary Clinton is going to have this year is a new book that is supposed to come out this summer about her time as Secretary of State, all of her purported triumphs, but she's also going to have to deal with another issue, Benghazi. Take a look.
The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator.
Britt, how big an issue do you think Benghazi will be for Hillary Clinton?
That's a little hard to tell, but it has been remarkably persistent. It has stayed alive despite repeated efforts on the left and in the friendly media so friendly to the left to declare it irrelevant and dead. The Senate report that came out was very careful not to name her, but it laid a tremendous amount of blame at pretty high levels of the State Department for the security and intelligence failures that led to the death of the American ambassador and 3 others. So I think it's an issue that's out there. And if this were a case where she had a very large and long record of major diplomatic achievements, doctrines or whatever, associated with her in her tenure as Secretary of State, it wouldn't matter so much. As it is, this is one of the foremost things we remember about her tenure as Secretary of State, which is one reason why needs to be a convincing book that's coming out to try to document that she really did have some kind of a record of doing something beyond setting records for travel.
I want to pick up on that because it seems to be another problem potentially for Hillary Clinton is her successor, John Kerry, who has been kind of a whirling dervish on the diplomatic scene. You can argue about the merits of them, but he's negotiated deals with Iran, with Syria, is pushing hard for an Israeli deal with the Palestinians. Senator Biden, could Kerry's record at the end of 3 or 4 years make Clinton's look much less impressive?
He's showing a lot of energy, Chris, and there may be some comparisons there. But I think unless there's a dramatic change in circumstances in our country, this is going to be an election driven by economics, particularly how it affects the middle class. Jobs, the cost of health care, college affordability, retirement security, all those sorts of things. And I just don't think, absent some new information of some kind, Benghazi will be all that important, or frankly, her tenure as Secretary of State. I think it's going to be where she wants to lead in the future, how she's going to get there, and I think she's got some advantages when it comes to that.
So do any of the 4 of you doubt, and we know what George has said, quoting Porgy and Bess, do any of you doubt that Hillary Clinton will run?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I think the chances are she will, but I think there's a significant possibility she might not. We don't know all that much about how her health is holding up. I think she probably wants to run, but she may decide not to. Age, health, such things can enter into consideration.
Also, the former president's health could be an issue, I suppose.
Yes, that's true.
And do any of you think that she will face serious, credible competition for the Democratic nomination if she runs?
She'll face competition, Chris, from the left. There will be a tribune of the left. There always is. But she's a unifying force. I don't think the important word there was serious. I don't think so. That gives her some significant advantages. But she has other advantages. The Electoral College tilts by about 30 or 32 toward the Democratic Party now, a reverse of what it was in the 70s and 80s. And most importantly, unless the Republicans figure out this dysfunction at the heart of their party, it gives the Democratic nominee, particularly if it's Hillary Clinton, a big advantage.
Real quickly, Julie?
George talked about inevitability at the start. That was one of Hillary's big problems in 2008. The American people just don't like somebody who's walking in as the inevitable candidate, and that will be the biggest thing for her to overcome if she does run.
If I could, been there, done that. I saw this in Indiana when she, at the end of the primary process the last time, she started off as the inevitable candidate. She saw that crash and burn. By the time she reached our state, she was beyond that, and it was all about what can I do for people? What can I do for the middle class? I think she's learned from that and won't make that mistake again.
All right, we have to step aside for a moment, but when we come back, the GOP tries to come up with a winning formula to stop losing presidential elections.